Hello everyone, David again. We're going to talk about part 2 of the Microsoft Identity Manager SP1 MIM and the MFA integration and conversion to the on-premises Azure Multi-Factor Authentication Server and using that SDK. So part 1, we went over the two scenarios, PAM and SSPR. And we went over the configuration and then also a little demo of those two scenarios in action with MFA SDK that is in Azure. So in part 2, we're going to go over the actual install, the MFA server, install of the MFA server SDK, and then of course the conversion over from Azure MFA to Azure MFA server that is on-prem. So again, it's going to take a few minutes, but this will be definitely useful when this enhancement releases. So let's get to it. So we're going to minimize here. All right, so here we are at our server. This is the server that we demoed on, the Azure MFA SDK. Again, it's already configured. We've already installed our hotfix, and then we already installed our SSL certificate for our later configuration. So we're going to download the MFA server, and if you missed it in the first step, part 1, you can go to your Azure login, go to your tenant, and then from there you will see Azure MFA down here under security. So all you do is click that. You will see the download, and then you'll see generate activation credentials for initial use. So we've already downloaded it. So now we'll install and then do the activation. So we're going to go ahead and right click. Run as administrator. Go through the setup. And it does require some prerequisites. It will automatically download them and install them if you do not already have them. All right, so we're going to do the default directory. And there you have it. So finished. And now it's going to launch. So here is the default. And also you'll know that when you do the installation, it will ask you for the activation and email. Seeing how this was already done on the server once before, I didn't get the prompt. It already detected that my machine was already activated. So that's some good news. So the next step is installing the web service SDK. So the first thing that we want to do is go to our IIS configuration. So you'll see that we have application pools, we have sites. By default or by selection, typically folks put it in the default website. Seeing how we're hosting multiple different sites, I want to actually just add a website, and we're going to call it MIM MFA SDK, just so we know that this is the SDK server or the SDK pathway for this. So we'll go to the directory and we will just pick www root, and then we'll make a folder and call it MFA SDK. Again, it could be completely different than your setup. I'm just doing it for simplicity. All right, and then we'll have our host. At this point, we're going to make it port 9999, and we're going to actually make it HTTPS. And we will do 9999. We will select our certificate. So we're going to look at our certificate, and you'll see it's a wildcard cert. Again, you could do a direct one, but in this case, we're just going to go ahead and hit OK. So this is the site. Again, there's nothing configured there. It's just an empty folder, but it is going to be HTTPS. And then we'll go ahead and minimize. And now we are going to head into our web service SDK. So we're going to go hit install. And this is going to bring up a wizard. And this is going to create an admin group. By default, it's going to actually try to create this group in Active Directory. So the person that you're logged in as must have admin rights to create the group, or it's a domain admin, or whatever the case may be. Again, this is all documented on their on the Azure Active Directory SDK documentation. Again, it's not MIM documentation, it's just the Azure MFA Authentication Server documentation. Now we're going to do the installer. And we're going to hit next. And this is where the configuration is. We're going to select our MIM MFA SDK. We're going to do the MIM MFA SDK app pool. Hit next. All right, we're going to hit close. The installation is complete. So let's go ahead and look at what we have here. So if we look at our MIM SDK, there's our site. If we look at our app pools, we do have a multi-factor authentication app pool as well. So it looks like we're good to go there. Next up, we're going to go ahead and add the user, or what we call import the user. So we're going to go ahead and click on import. Down at the bottom here, import. And as you can see, it's already detected the contoso.com. We're going to go navigate to our service account. Again, this service account is what the MIM service is running on. And to find that out, you can go to services and then just look at the logon service account. So MIM service. So let's minimize this. And MIM services, there we go. We're going to add new users. We're going to enable backup. We're only going to add the user. We're not going to import the number from Active Directory. So we're going to enable only new users with phone numbers and add the user. So we're going to go ahead and select MIM service and import. So that user has been imported. We're going ahead to hit close down here at the bottom. Close that. And as you can see, we have the MIM service identified in the MFA server. So the next thing we have to do, we have to click the highlight the MIM service. As you can see, there's a little icon there telling us that there is a problem and that user is disabled. So we are going to hit edit down here at the bottom. And we are going to keep the standard phone call. And we are going to enable the user. Hit apply, and then we're going to go ahead and hit close. Now that we've done that, we have a couple more steps to do. Again, they're pretty simple steps. We're going to open up IIS. So open up IIS. We're going to navigate to our directory, and that directory is the MIM MFA SDK. We need to update the authentication mechanism. Right now it's set to anonymous and basic authentication for the MFA SDK. We need Windows. So we're going to double click on that. So the way you get there is select the directory, go to IIS settings, and then go ahead and click on authentications. So we're going to click on authentications, and you're going to see anonymous is there, as well as we're going to disable that. Disable, and then we're going to enable Windows authentication. So that's all the steps we would require at this point. And we are going to perform an IIS reset. So let's go ahead and do that. By opening up the command prompt. And this should be reset here in a couple seconds. So it is reset. Now we need to make sure our service account has permissions to talk to the SDK service using the multi-factor authentication server or the web service SDK. So the next thing is we need to add the user to the group. So we're going to go to Corp DC, or our domain controller. We're going to open up the MIM service account, and then we're going to add it as a member of the phone factor authentic actor admins group. And this was created during the setup. So that account, and as well as we're going to add our MIM install account, which is the account that I'm logged in as part of that as well. And this is only so we can test the SDK service. So you'll need to, once added, you'll need to log off or restart the service account so the membership is generated properly. So we will go back to our server. Again, this was already done ahead of time, but we wanted to make sure it's working appropriately. So we've imported the user, we've activated the user, we've installed the SDK, we updated the SDK to make sure Windows authentication is enabled. To test that, we can go ahead and just browse to the directory. So HTTPS, corp, multi-service, MFA SDK. This is the URL, the full URL, if you're looking to understand what URL path we're going to take. And this is the full path. So corp service, HTTPS, contoso.com, the port number, and then multi-factor authentication web service SDK, and then of course the PFWS SDK.asmx. So we added that to in our browser, and then as you can see, we have the actual functions or operations we can actually perform. So that's one test to just make sure we can get there appropriately. The next item is actually testing it. So we will open up a new item, and this new item is essentially a nice executable that can be run in the multi-factor authentication server. So this is a nice utility in the multi-factor authentication server. We're going to scroll down and you're going to see this, and it's actually called PFWS SDK_test. We will need to update the config file. So we'll open that with Notepad++, and you'll see we'll put the exact same URL in there. So, which is great. So this executable is going to run. We will go ahead and execute that. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to hit run. And there we have it. So the API we are using is the PF auth, and we are going to go ahead and put in our information, Contoso, and then we're going to do MIM service because this is the account we're going to use. We're going to put in the password, as I said, and we're going to put in the username, and the username is going to be the essentially the email address or the UPN. So we're going to do MIM service at contoso.com. We're going to do the voice call, require user match, and then we're going to put in the phone number. So I'll put my phone number in here. Okay. Click execute. Look at my phone. Ah, look at that. I get a phone call.
Press the pound key to finish your verification. Your sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
So we've verified that. We've also confirmed that, which is great. So this is the test. So it looks like we're all set to go to update our configuration for the MIM service. So we're going to go ahead and close this out. Again, this is a nice useful tool if you're trying to figure out what's going on or what error code or whatever the case may be. It's great utility for that. So now we're going to go ahead and open up the config file. In that config file, we will change the configuration. So now it's still currently using Azure MFA for the phone call. So now we want to switch it over to use the actual configuration. So I think I already have this up in Notepad++, so let's go ahead and do that. Where is the setting at? Here we go. So here we have it. So there are 3 lines we want to update. One is the username. So the username is going to be mimservice@contoso.com. So let's do that. Okay. And we're going to change the local MFA to true. And then we're going to change the server name, just like we did in that config file. For testing, the same idea. So there we have it. So we have the username, the local MFA equals true, and then local server name. And then let's go ahead and save that. Of course. Save it now. So next thing we need to do is test this out. But before we do that, we need to actually restart the service, Forefront Entity Management service, so it actually will consume the config file. So we've went ahead and restarted it. So now is the moment of truth. We're going to go to our machine where we had password reset operations. And now we want to see if this all worked out. So we're going to go ahead and do Contoso, MIM install. And if this worked out, we should see the actual communication going through our MFA server that is on-prem. Next. We should now get a phone call. So I still haven't received a phone call, so I wanted to show you what that would look like. So the configuration we put in, I didn't receive that phone call. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel here because something occurred. So I know MIM service, so I know all this worked. So what did I do? So I'm going to open up the event log, and I'm going to hit refresh, and I already see some errors. So here is Azure MFA authentication failed, user not found. Error 101. So that came from the Azure multi-factor authentication server that user was not found. So what was not found? So the phone numbers seem to be all right. So let's look at our configuration a bit. So let's go back to here. So MIM service at contoso.com. Let's open up our config file one more time. I see the discrepancy. So here we have svc-mim service, and in our is MIM service at contoso. Well, that would explain it. So let's try it one more time. Now MIM service at contoso.com. Okay, well, let's try that. And we will need to restart the service just to make sure everything's good. All right. Refresh. Everything's good. All right. So now let's go back to our client machine and let's try it again. And we're going to hit next. Put our phone here. Oh, look at that. We got our call. Answer. All right. We're going to hang up, hit next. And there we have it. We have our questions now. And then we can proceed on. So now I know that the config is working. We want to verify. So we're going to switch over to the server again. So let's switch over here. And we're going to navigate. So we were in the users. We're going to navigate to logging. So I want to see to make sure that we actually came through here. So it goes to the directory logs. We're going to open up what we call the multi-factor auth service log. And then from here, this is where all the logging occurs for anything related. So I see right away already that we did do a authentication, and it was by the MIM service, and then the phone number was occurred. It was via voice, and then the authenticated equals true, and then we came back with a confirmation. So very cool, very cool. All right, so that will complete our conversion from the Azure MFA SDK service to the on-prem, what we call the multi-factor authentication server SDK, or the web service SDK that is hosted on premise. So again, The scenarios that cover in this is MIM SSPR, MIM PAM. Again, they all use the same configuration file. We install the latest MIM hotfix that has this enhancement enabled. We installed the SSL certificate. We assume this was already configured for Azure MFA SDK. If not, then you would just skip to the 3 configuration items. We did the conversion from Azure SDK to the on-prem SDK. We installed the service, we configured the service, and then we've successfully tested using SSPR. Again, that is the final steps, and then you're able to continue on.